Eat less, move more. No doubt you've come across that phrase at some point in your dieting journey. You've got to that stage where things have either hit a little bit of a plateau or maybe the wheels have come off the wagon several times over. And the best advice that you can get your hands on is, well, kind of just try harder, or words to that effect, or some variation on that theme. Maybe it's the case that your diet is absolutely perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with your training program. It's just your ability to commit and execute that training program and execute that nutrition program is fundamentally flawed because you're just not trying hard enough. But is that the case? Is it the case that you just need to try a little bit harder, that you need to put a little bit more effort into this whole fitness, nutrition, weight loss, building muscle thing? That's what we're going to be talking about in this episode of the show. Now, if you are listening to this on the podcast, make sure you leave a rating and a review, especially if you are on iTunes. And if you are watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because those things are what help the channel and the podcast grow into a bigger beast than it already is. But for now, let's get talking about this concept of just trying harder, because I've got three ways that you can think about approaching your diet, approaching your nutrition and training that aren't necessarily rooted in just trying a little bit harder. They're a bit more nuanced because, let's face it, it's not just as simple as trying harder, because that's what you keep on doing. So, without further ado, let's get straight into this one. So you keep overshooting your calories, maybe only by 200, 300 calories, but it's enough to put you up to maintenance or maybe even into a small surplus. Then when it comes to training, you're trying hard to stick to that training program that you've set for yourself, but it's difficult to be consistent because you find that life just starts to get in the way, whether it's the pressures of work, the pressures of home life, you've got competing commitments from family, friends, things like that, that make trying to be consistent with your training program all too difficult. Now, a lot of the phrases that you'll hear, which are frankly stupid and frankly really don't take into consideration the circumstances of individuals, are phrases like just sort it out, just get it done, try a bit harder. Those sorts of things are often what you hear from the ill-informed or the just downright ignorant. So, how do we need to think about things slightly different so that it's not just a case of just kind of getting back onto the same track and just trying to rely on willpower to pull you through, to force your way through with brute force and absolute ignorance? Now, truth be told, it's not a case of desire. It's not a case of want, because you really, really want to lose weight. You don't want to fall off the wagon. You don't want to be inconsistent with your training. You want to be that person who goes to the gym on a regular basis, sticks to their nutrition program, sees results. So it's not a case of you don't want it bad enough, which some people will tell you. The actual answer is a little bit more nuanced. It's a little bit more complex, because the concept of losing weight, i.e. a calorie deficit, is a basic principle. It's not difficult to understand, but it is very difficult to implement in the real world, especially in modern life where things are fast-paced, there's lots of temptation in terms of food, there's lots of competing pressures and priorities and things like that. That's where it starts to get complicated. Therefore, the answer to this question about how do you actually get results is much more individualized than a simple blanket statement of just try harder. You need to understand the individual circumstances and situations. So where are you at right now with a number of different things, and how can you start to manipulate your way you approach your nutrition, the way you approach your mindset, the way you approach habits and things like that, so that the nutrition and the training program that you construct for yourself is actually slotted in and fitted around your lifestyle. That's going to be the key starting point for this whole thing. So the first thing I want you to do, instead of just try harder, is to reflect and assess. Now, it probably brings a little bit of vomit into my mouth to say the words fitness journey, but I guess that's kind of what it is. We're all on this path to trying to achieve something, and thinking about it as a bit of a journey is kind of a little bit cliche, but it also kind of works, because what you need to think about is that when something goes wrong, when something doesn't go according to plan, that's not a dead end. That's not, okay, that was shit, I'm crap, I need to really start again because this is all shot to shit and there's nothing I can do and I'm crap. That's really a bad way to think about it. What you need to think about is when something happens that was unexpected, or maybe you went slightly off the rails. Maybe it's a case that you were good all week, as a lot of people are, but then it comes to Friday, Saturday night, and you just think, fuck it, I'm gonna have a pizza, or something like that. And you might want to therefore think about, rather than beating yourself up about that whole situation, okay, well, what didn't work? Did you drop calories too low? Did something happen during the week? Did something happen before ordering that takeaway that triggered you to want to go do that? So then it starts to figure out, okay, reflect and assess what didn't work for me. What was it about the way that I've constructed my nutrition, the way I'm going about this, that isn't quite working for me? So don't think of it as a case of this whole thing is crap and we're just going to throw the whole thing out the window. It's about understanding, right, okay, probably the large proportion of what you're doing is right. It's now just about tweaking those final bits to make sure that you've got all of the pieces of the puzzle in the right place for you. Just because somebody at work, let's call them Karen, everybody seems to be Karen, and they do keto, maybe that's not right for you. Maybe you're a carb lover. Maybe you just don't want to give up those carbs because that would make you miserable. That would make life miserable. So therefore, that's not the piece of your puzzle that you need to use. Doesn't mean to say you can't do keto. Of course you can. But again, it's about figuring out what isn't working for you and tweak and adjust that. So each time maybe even each time you finish each day, it might be good to sit, reflect, and assess what happened in the last 24 hours. You know, what went well? What could you repeat? What is actually working for you? Pat yourself on the back for what is going your way. Then the things that didn't quite go according to plan, well, what was it about them? What could you do differently? And then just assess and change and alter the course as it needs to be. Because once you understand the specific problem, you can understand the specific solution. And that's the key that I want you to take away from this first point. Reflect and assess, because there are always going to be points at which you don't get it right. There are always going to be things that you need to change and adapt. That's the same for everybody. Even the person that you are trying to potentially emulate, that person that you see has got, in your eyes, the perfect physique. To get to that point, they just didn't have a linear journey where it was all plain sailing. They had to change, they had to adjust, there were obstacles. They just kept moving forward, but they course corrected as they went. And that's the mindset that you need to get into. That there is no failure point. The only failure that you have is when you actually just jack it all in and give up. The second thing you need to do is create input goals that are really task driven, that get you towards that end result. Now, most people, probably even you listening and watching to this right now, have a broad goal that goes something along the lines of lose weight and or build muscle. Pretty much everybody has a goal along those lines, some variation on that theme anyway, especially people who are just starting out in this whole fitness journey thing, to use the cliche again. Now, that is quite possibly the shittest goal you could possibly write down, because it doesn't really mean anything. Lose weight, build muscle is not specific enough. Now, we could go off in a tangent and talking about your why. Why is it you want to achieve that? And that is important. I'd encourage you to do that. So whenever I'm taking on a client and they say, I want to lose weight. Okay, great. Why? Why do you want to lose that weight? What's the specific reason? And then that starts to dig into some of the fundamental reasons why you want to change your body, change your physique. Is it a confidence thing? So on and so forth. And that really helps me as a coach understand how I'm going to coach this person. And again, understanding that for you is going to help you understand how you need to help yourself through this process or get someone in to help you with this process. But that's not the route we're going to go down for this right now. What I want to talk about is setting input goals. Now, solid input goals really do help to build up a set of momentum. They help you focus in on what happens day to day rather than over the course of the medium to long term. So these might be things like go to the gym 3 times a day, prep your food at the weekend. It might be to journal every day. It might be to do a daily gratitude, something that you are going to do every single day, possibly every week, but certainly on a frequent basis, that if you just start nailing those things, basically the goal is going to come to you. You're not going to go chasing, let's say, 20 kilos of weight loss, because on day one, that's going to feel very, very far away. So you need to create goals and achievement points along the way, preferably each and every day, but if not across the week, that feel like successes. They feel like little wins that are getting you towards that goal. Because it might not be a case of just try harder. It might be a case that you've got this lofty goal out in the distance that just feels unrealistic. It feels like you can't achieve it. So therefore, you're already in a negative mindset that maybe you can't do this. Maybe this is too far away. Maybe it is too slow. Maybe you are doing something wrong. It allows this floodgates of negativity to come into your mind that really start to, sprinkle those feelings of self-doubt across your actual progress. So if you kind of say, well, okay, I've got this 20 kilo goal that's off in the distance, but right now, what I'm going to do is focus in on the input goals. What do I need to do every single day? What do I need to take action on? What can I tick off the sheet this day, the next day, and keep that momentum going? So once you focus on input goals, that really starts to change the mindset, the behavior, and the habits that start to then really kind of get those results for you. Now, once you've done that, over the course of a period of time, you will also find you've established good habits, good behaviors. Now, that is crucially important because when dieting is over, the reason why people yo-yo backwards and forwards with weight loss is because they haven't really established good habits. So focusing on input goals that might be things like, eating 200 grams of vegetables with both main meals, things like that. These sorts of habits can help you make your weight loss and your transformation last for a long time into the future. So keep bearing those things in mind, that input goals are really key. Yes, you want to have maybe a big ambitious goal that you want to work towards, but you've got to break that down into achievable input goals. That's where some of the success is going to come from. And lastly on a list, number 3 is I want you to start small and build. There's a common perception that, when you start to consume some content from someone like me on Instagram or wherever it is that you consume content, is that there's a lot to think about. I've done nearly 500 podcasts now at the time of releasing this one. Nearly 500 subjects, pieces of content with extra content within those pieces of content. So there's a lot to devour and divulge and kind of assimilate. Now, if you thought, well, shit, there's so much information for me to get my head around, that it becomes overwhelming. Now, you might think that, okay, well, I've got to do all of this sort of stuff. Otherwise, I'm just not doing enough. I'm just not trying hard enough, because you're not doing all of these things. If you're not doing everything, then what's the point of even starting? Because you're not going to make progress. But actually, if you really start small, start with the minimum commitment that you can make and build from there. That's the best way to do it. Now, when I work with some clients, I literally just get them to do one thing. It might really seem really, really simple and what the hell am I paying you for? But this is the difference. The difference in having the confidence to just do one thing, because sometimes it's the psychology of the process that is the most important thing. And until you get that right, the rest of it is not really going to come. So we might just say, right, yes, there's all of this other stuff to focus in on. There's all of this stuff nutritionally, training-wise that we could do. But maybe I want you to get some momentum. I want you to make some good progress in those first few weeks to get your confidence up, to get you moving forward, to see that, yeah, you know what? If I just focus on one thing, let's say that's calories, and I nail that and I get that right, I make a huge amount of progress. And that's motivation. I don't have to worry about meal timing, protein frequency. I don't have to worry about circadian rhythms. I don't have to worry about supplements, creatine, all of these different sorts of things. You focus in on one thing. And then from there, we've nailed calories. Right, what's the next piece of the puzzle we can start to build? So we build this thing into something that as you're adding to it, it feels achievable. Rather than say, right, here's a fuckload of information, start there and work your way through it. And then when you feel like, okay, I'm not making progress. Okay, well, it's just because I'm not trying hard enough to get through all this shit that I've got to do. That's not really the case. So simplify and build. That's the way I would approach it. Remember as well, you've got your reflections and your adjustments that you're going to make from point 1. You've also got your input goals from point 2. And then you're going to build from this small base. And then you're going to gather momentum like it was this snowball effect. So the bottom line is, don't think you have to try harder. Maybe just try to be a bit smarter about the way that you go about your weight loss, building muscle, whatever your specific goal is. Because there are going to be tough times. There are going to be times where you're going to dips in motivation, you're going to feel like you're not making progress, etc., etc., etc. But what you want is that process, that solid plan to fall back on that helps you to keep pushing forward. That's the key thing. It's not about saying, well, I just need to try harder, try harder, try harder. It's probably that you haven't got the right approach. You haven't got the right plan. You haven't got the tools, the techniques, the ability to cope with all these different situations, or even the knowledge of what to do in certain situations. And that's where, something like if you wanted to go down the route of coaching, maybe that's something that might be right for you at the moment, is that I could potentially teach you how to do that, how to put those pieces of the puzzle together. Or you can take this information and you can run with it. Like I said before, you can map out that journey, think of it as a journey, and you can reflect and assess as you go. So hopefully these 3 points have kind of helped reset your mindset when it comes to this concept of just try harder. Hopefully we've kind of expelled that for good, and you can start to think about your progress in a different context. Now, if you are someone who's interested in one-to-one coaching, then maybe you want to get in touch so we can talk about how to set those goals, set that plan of action, and have me guide you through that process from start to finish. Absolutely, we can do that. There's a link in the show notes below. Likewise, if you're someone who wants to go it alone, that's cool too, and I want to help you on that journey as well. So again, link in the show notes. You're going to get access to my free online calorie calculator. From there, over the course of, I think it's like 3 or 4 days, I'm going to send you basically a starter pack for getting started with living a leaner, healthier life for good. So you get the calorie calculator access from day 1, and then you get a calorie and macro guide so you can learn about nutrition. 3-4 week training program, so we sort out what happens in the gym. We can then have an ebook which helps you with cravings, an ebook that's got professionally created recipe packs in it. So basically enough to get you off to a flying start. So whether you are someone who wants to go down option A, which is get me to do it for you, or option B, go it alone with confidence, then absolutely the links in the show notes will take you to either one of those solutions. I suggest you go check them out. They are, of course, free. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you are listening to this on a podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a rating if you are on iTunes as well. Every little bit helps. And of course, tell your friends, tag me in your Instagram stories. Always happy to kind of reshare you in my stories and hear about where and when you're listening to these podcasts as well. Plus, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome too. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.